Personal brand does not mean that you need to become a Kardashian. They need to take a step back and revisit the strategy. If anything is going to take you longer than 20 minutes, we need to take another look at it. The organizations that remember that tend to outperform the ones that are chasing the newest trend. I fundamentally believe in the human spirit.
Welcome back to the Breakout CEO podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Holman with Intellectual Strategies. And I get to talk to a lot of CEOs behind the scenes, and I can't tell their stories because as an attorney, that's all confidential. But we get to talk to the CEOs and the advisors who advise the CEOs. And so we have a lot of fun on the podcast, kind of sharing insights and experiences and things that we try to put into the perspective of what I call the breakout framework. And today we've got a great guest, maybe a special guest even, because Diane Moura is with us today. Diane, I've been on your show and now I've got you on mine and we're just sharing expertise. It's really great to have you here.
Absolutely. It's fun to be on the other side of the microphone.
Well, I know that when we talked, you asked me a bunch of questions and I probably dominated the conversation. So today's your turn. We're gonna ask you some questions and get some of your expertise out. Specifically for the people who are out there scaling businesses, right? We, like the CEOs who are in that stage, it's a tough stage, I think. Tell me what you think about this. And I don't know, this is just off the cuff. Maybe you got thoughts, maybe you don't. When you work with clients who are kind of in that, say, $5 to $50 million range, they're CEOs, they're building, they're kind of still maybe working out some of the kinks in their business model, but they're also trying to grow it. And like how do you look at them and how would you describe that type of CEO and the issues they deal with?
Yeah, I mean, in true consultant fashion, I am going to say it depends, but
Good. I'm comfortable with that.
I come at this from a lens of having spent, a few decades in corporate America, and I've, worked with a bunch of the Fortune 500. So that's how I started my career. So I got to see things at scale. So I just have this sense of how things work when they're operating at scale, and then being able to apply that to smaller scaling businesses, but having kind of seen the end result, it does give me that perspective. So, a lot of, I think, obviously when you're initially founding a company, it tends to be all about the founder. You're a chief cook and bottle washer. And then at some point, you hire a few people and you hire a few more people. And especially if you're scaling quickly, the hiring tends to outpace the structure. And so, when you're at a certain point in the company, it can be kind of okay for it to be just very collaborative. And I don't want to go as far as to say free for all, but, it can be a lot looser. But then when you get to the point where the founder is not in the middle of all the conversations, and now you have a next level of leadership, now you start to have to worry about not only process, but culture and, service standards. And, how do you make sure that even though you're not in the room, that things are operating the way that you would expect them to operate if you were in the room? Bit of, possibly some of a fallacy there because, founders will tell you it never works as well as when they're there driving. And you'll hear about founders that they'll scale to a certain point. And they'll delegate and they'll get the processes going. And suddenly things start going off the rails and they go into founder mode and they just dive back in. And they're like, I'm going to work around the clock and I'm going to fix this darn thing myself. And then they try to figure out how to pull back. So there's a little bit of that balance there that, I've seen executives wrestle with. And I think some of the challenge is really in, depending on their background, they may not necessarily be hiring the right level of experience to be that next level of leader. So if you have, the executives and then the people that are working for the executive are more junior, maybe because budget isn't there, then the leader is going to have to dive in a lot more, and you're going to need a lot more structure, and the clients are going to expect to see you. So that's really the balance that I'm sure you hear from leaders as well. Is should I hire fewer expensive people or more less expensive people? And it's not a clear answer for every business, but if you do have that next level of leadership that you're confident that you can delegate to, and they have the savvy and the client presence to be able to really be more like you in front of clients and to drive the business, over time, it tends to be a lot less stressful for the executive.
Yeah. Well, that's like, I love that you answered it that way, because it shows that you're not only you don't only work with CEOs, you are running your own business. Like that's said from the CEO perspective right there, right? You're like you've been through it. Not that you're describing your own business when you say all that, because you're speaking generically, but clearly you've done a lot of your own business leadership. Uh, Maybe we should give some background to the audience. Tell us a little bit about ZenChange and maybe some of the things that led up to that and how long you've been doing ZenChange marketing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, after I reached the point I was traveling around the globe with corporate, and it was great. And I got to work with boardrooms and see a lot, and really be that, really learn the bridge between applying technology to business
Mm-hmm.
issues. So I'm by no means a technical person, as my engineering family continues to remind me, but I do understand and love technology, and I love the use cases of what technology can do. So I've been in marketing long enough to remember when people were asking if they even needed a website. And, I've watched executives wrestle with, email and search engines and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
that, and smartphones. And so to be at this age of AI now is incredibly exciting as that next evolution. So, when I left, I decided that I wanted to kind of get off the weekly travel grind, because it
mm-hmm.
was a lot. And then I launched ZenChange. It's been a little over 13 years now. And it was, like anyone out there who's listening, and, you've been in corporate and you've had, the legal department you get to go see, and you have, the salespeople helping you, and you have you basically have this entire ecosystem around you doing everything. And suddenly you launch your own thing, and now you have to figure it out yourself. And now
It's
you're
me,
it.
me, and me. Yes.
Right, exactly. And if you don't know, then you either hire someone or you partner with a company who can do that thing. So maybe you partner with a law firm that knows all their stuff, and you kind of get them on more of a fractional basis. Maybe you partner with a marketing agency and you get them on a
Yeah.
fractional basis, and you kind of build your company that way until you can scale up to the point where you can do your own thing. So, so because I think of that background, ZenChange is, yes, a marketing agency, and we do all of the stuff that you would expect a marketing agency would do, from, strategy through to execution. But I think because of understanding that founder's dilemma, we also quite often work with clients where we will just plug right in and become their outsourced marketing department. And we'll work seamlessly with the client. And in some cases, I've worked with founders who decide that they want a family member to learn how to lead their marketing team. And we'll just work side by side, and we'll kind of help train them, and we'll fill in the pieces that, they might not be comfortable doing. Because nowadays, like whenever somebody says, "Oh yes, I have a marketing person," and I kind of snicker, because it's like, really, you have like you have a developer, you have, somebody who understands analytics, they know how to run ads, they're super creative, they're a great writer. It's like, who is that super person, right? So you do need all those skills, but you're not, when you're growing a company, at the point where you can yet have all of those as being roles internally. So, like anything, it's just a great opportunity to really, partner with somebody on more of a fractional basis. So that's the kind of business that we run. We focus on services businesses, primarily. So, like law firms and, doctors and restaurants and, trades and that. And we really, for a lot of those clients, just kind of become their marketing team, so they don't need to worry about it.
That makes sense. As you're describing that, I'm thinking there are a lot of parallels between marketing and law. As I've been the attorney for a lot of different companies, I'm like, you guys know that you need several different attorneys because there's different expertise. I don't do it all. I mean, I'm a smart guy, I think, but I'm not the expert in across the board in 15 different areas. And I think marketing is the same way, right? People are starting up and they're like, I need a marketing person.
Right.
And I just need them to take
grab like their cousin or like this person who just graduated. And it's like, well, they have a marketing degree. I think they can go run my marketing department. It's like, okay,
but marketing is so much
what you
broader.
learned out of a book is one thing, but how many campaigns have you run where you've actually had to make sure that you're driving the results
Yeah.
and you understand what that takes? And, I agree with you. I think law firms are quite similar, the way that you structure services and the way that, nobody wants to pay for hourly anymore. They just want to have like,
Really?
tell me what I'm getting and, give
Yeah.
me a fixed price for that and, make sure that you deliver and it's clear. But yeah, I mean, in the world of marketing, you have, you have your kind of your, even to the point of if you want to build a website, the skill set to design the site is not usually the same skill set of building the site because it had of all the
Totally different.
technical pieces that have to go into place. And then you've got SEO and then, AEO if you want to be found by AI and then GEO if you want to be found locally. And then you've got your super creative. It's like marketing's really become, I think, very much of a yin and yang because you have all of the technical stuff that you need to do, but then you equally have all of the creative piece because if you look at social media, now you're dealing with humans like I think on web and SEO a lot of it you're really trying to make the bots happy, but then also the humans when they actually come and see your content. But on social media, you're trying to make the algorithms happy, but then you're also trying to stop the scroll with humans. So, how do you do that? And it really is this balance of skills that you need in an organization to accomplish that.
Well, and that's probably why you've built what you've built with your team and everything. But I want to go back. We don't need to dwell too long on this, but I just want to explore when you went from corporate traveling, doing all this stuff for these large, structured, well-funded companies, and you said I'm gonna start my own thing. First 6 months into that, what are some of the things that didn't go quite as planned? You thought, oh, I'm going to go out, we're going to land these clients, or we're going to, XYZ. And as you get into it, you're like, well, that's not what I thought. But what are some of those? Surely there were a few of those moments, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that it was a smooth transition by any means. I mean, I remember, I think one of my first prospects and I sat them down in a room and gave them a PowerPoint presentation because, that's how I was used to doing it in corporate. And that's just not the way that it works when you're out in the...
How big was this potential client?
I mean, they weren't huge. So this would be maybe the first PowerPoint presentation they had seen all month, at least. So it was just not how they were used to consuming information.
I don't think I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation for potential clients with my clients. I can see how that they'd be like, oh, well, wait a second.
Like, all right, so what? Yeah, turn the lights out and everything. I mean, we had the.
They're like, I was going to write you a check, but you made me sit through that PowerPoint.
I know. Now I'm done. So, I mean, you learn because I think a lot of, when you're dealing with smaller organizations, so much is really dependent on relationships.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really learned is just the power of building your network and having the relationships because if I tell somebody I'm going to, they need an attorney, I'm going to say, oh, here's Jeff. I 100% trust him. Here's the guy that you need to work with. There's a pretty good chance that they're just going to work with you and they're not going to go talk to 6 other law firms. But, if I'm just kind of hitting them up cold, well, now they don't know who you are. And so there's this whole, you still even digitally need to feel like you're kind of developing a relationship, which is where I know we were talking before we went live about, personal branding and the importance of that and how that can help to bridge the gap. But those relationships and building your network and creating your referral partners and really nurturing those referral partners, I think if you're doing nothing else when you're starting and again, this is for a services business, not for, an app, a technology or an e-com business, but services in particular, it's so much about relationships and credibility that I think that's a really, really key aspect to growing your business.
In service businesses, I think, there's this aspect to them where if you go to law school or maybe you're a doctor and you open a practice or a dentist or an architect, whoever it might be, right? These service businesses, I think they're starting to change a little bit, but for the most part, you learn the technical, we'll call it the technical side of it, right? The technical side of the law for me. But you don't know any of the business side of it. So you go in, you're like, I'm going to start a business. And then all of a sudden 90% of your day is spent doing business,
Yeah.
and the marketing feels foreign. And you're like, but then wait, I gotta actually find time for networking and
Yeah.
building my personal brand. And it's pretty amazing if you stop and think about it, or at least I think so. When we look out there and we say, despite how incredibly hard it is, like a lot of people really make it, and
Yeah.
they build these firms, and they're pretty cool. And
They do. And you see some consistencies there with, who makes it and who doesn't. But, and even, I talk to a lot of physicians in particular where, the line I hear from them is, well, I just want to practice medicine. You figure out how to get the patients in the door. I say, okay,
yes.
well, yes, but we still need to get your face out there because that's who they're coming to see.
Well,
Right.
well, tell us a little bit about that, because personal branding and probably some other things what are some of the things you run into kind of on a regular basis for these companies that are really trying to, maybe they're established enough that, and I use $1 million as kind of, you can get to $1 million just operating a business, yourself or with a small team, and in a lot of fields, and you don't necessarily have the structure, but how to get past that, whatever that threshold point is, whether it's 1 million or 500 or 2 million for your industry, whatever that is, to get past that, all of a sudden you have to start being more deliberate. You have to do things you've never done before, even though you worked really hard and you got to where you were because you're capable, but it's those extra things that people like you can bring in and say, yeah, you've done well. Now we need to start thinking about the next stage. What are those things for the clients that you work with?
Well, it's, a lot of times it is breaking out of your comfort zone and being visible. I tell leaders that it is not optional to be what I'll say top of funnel or to be the lead generator for your brand or the face of your brand. And I mean, even large firms like Morgan and Morgan, who's on the billboards, who's in the commercials.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
John Morgan. I mean, his wife is starting now, but I mean, it's, he's recognized. But if you actually want to engage them for your case, he's not the guy who's litigating for you, right? But he is the face of the brand, and he is that trusted image. So he becomes part of the brand. And you do see that with I'm using law firms as an example, but you do see that as, with the firms that make it, is that the leader is not afraid to be out there personally, but yet they have hired the team that they have the confidence is going to execute to their standards. And that should be enough to make the prospect comfortable that, we all kind of know we're not going to get to talk to that person, but you're hoping, or you have the impression that behind the scenes, they're driving the standards that will allow you to receive a higher level of service than perhaps if you engage with a smaller firm that's less visible. So, I mean, you have to, as a leader, be out there. You have to be on video these days. I know a lot of leaders are not a fan of that, but I keep telling people, unfortunately, get over it. So you have to, as the leader, you just, you are front and center for the brand. You're setting the standard. There's a reason why if you get on a sales call that you're more likely to close it than anybody else working in your company. It's because of who you are and that credibility. So how do you scale that? And you scale that through personal branding. And it's, being on video, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're personally doing it all, because you got a company to run. So, if one of the things that a marketing firm can do for you is to capture you on video, let's say, and then now use the heck out of that everywhere. Right. So it's going to be clips, and it's going to be turning that into written content and, grabbing quotes. And, so how do we not take up a ton of your time, but still manage to scale that across, whatever channels? Because one of the things that we're seeing with AI is, in order to get found, it really is omni-channel. It used to be that you could just say, well, I'm just going to pick like one or two, let's say, social media channels. I'm just going to do them really, really well. It's like, yeah, but the bots are checking everywhere. and you're trying to get, like brand mentions, and the more that you're being talked about are the things that the bots are looking for. So you really do need to be out everywhere, visible, engaging with your audiences. But again, it's just too much for a single leader to do on their own. But, if you run a law firm, for example, so the founding partners should be out there doing personal brand, but, any of the managing partners, they should be out there managing their personal brand as well, because they're all responsible for generating their book of business. So, that's part of what's going to help you make those connections.
Well, do you? I would suspect, and maybe it's because I've been doing this for close to 25 years now, that I would suspect, maybe I just don't see what's happening around me sometimes. I would suspect that a lot of people still, though, when you say everybody needs a personal brand, there are probably a ton of people who are just not doing it, though, right? And not everybody's building a personal brand, and certainly not everybody's out there doing omni-channel. Like, what are you seeing? Am I describing it correctly? Is that what you're seeing, that you only have maybe 20% of the people who are actually really trying to, whether it's on LinkedIn or YouTube, get out there and do branding, or is it more or less than that? What do you see?
So remember that personal brand does not mean that you need to become a Kardashian.
Thank you. Thank goodness.
So personal brand can be for a niche audience. It's just making sure that you are being clear about your point of view, you're being visible, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily becoming a massive influencer. So there's a difference. Yeah. It's, not hiding behind the scenes and being out there more. So I am seeing more and more leaders who are more willing to do that these days. I think they're really recognizing, as much as they'll still say, well, I hate being on video, but there's, sometimes there's ways we can make that easy. So not everyone is comfortable just looking eyes to camera and saying something, off the cuff. They get, I've worked with a number of attorneys who, it's interesting because you find like the litigators, you put a camera on them and they just go. You don't even need to give them a script half of the time. But any of the transactional attorneys, like we've had great conversations, and then we turn the lights on and they're like, and you have to do like 25 takes to get what you need out of them. So, I think that you need to also play to your strengths. And if you're more comfortable having a conversation like this, be on a podcast, right? Because you and I are just having a casual conversation that could be happening over coffee anywhere. Easy. But easy and, free flowing. You don't really have to think about what you're going to say because it's all in your head anyway. And that's going to also create content that can form part of your personal brand. Yeah. So I think there's more of that happening now.
Yeah. Does some of this, I know you said you focus on service-based companies. Does some of this, though, carry over into other realms, people building different types of businesses? Is the need to be kind of the face of the business the same, or is it different depending on the industry you're in?
I think it is different. Services, because at the end of the day, you're selling people, is definitely a, people forward type of branding. The product, if you're a product-based business, the product is the star. So you may be featuring the person behind the product. So let's say it's a medical product. You want to hear from the doctor talking about the medical product. Same with if it's a scientific product. If it's, like a widget, then, maybe I would rather hear from an influencer telling me how cool the widget is and, how much they enjoy using it. Or if I'm, if it's like skincare, I want to see an influencer using it and here's the before and after and that type of thing. So it's a little more product focused, but you see when I talked about influencers, there's still the aspect of people. So, in that case, let's say you're a skincare brand and you're founded by a dermatologist. So we still want to hear from the dermatologist. We want to know why you selected that formula and why it's different and why it's better. But then we also want to see, a number of people who look like us using the product,
testimonials,
and seeing the before and after. Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. I'd like to dig in a little bit into maybe seeing how what you do fits into these breakout moments that we talk about here on the show. And the breakout moment, of course, is, if you follow what we're calling the breakout arc, you've got, somebody is building momentum somewhere. Usually they're gaining traction, they're launching products. That momentum is growing, but then there's a disruption to the momentum. We call that the break. And so you're building, and something breaks, and then you have this breakout moment where you get to sit back and reflect on why it broke and how to manage it and what constraints you're dealing with and things like that. And if you do it correctly, then maybe you'll have the breakthrough, which is regaining your momentum, or even maybe achieving a new trajectory for the company. Where do you fit into this? Like, when do people come to you and they say, "Hey, Deanne, I've been trying," and do they come because something is already broken, or do they come because they're at the building stage? And there's probably a difference between when do they normally come versus when should they come. But what is it you see, it kind of in that cycle, and how do you help CEOs that are looking to grow their companies manage that breakout kind of moment in their business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do come at all different phases, but in terms of specifically the break, we've been doing a lot of work lately with companies that are trying to get to insert company name here 2.0. And a lot of that is being driven by the rapid pace of technology acceleration. It's being driven by the fact that they may have been doing things in-house for a period of time. But when you work in-house and you're focused on a single brand, you're kind of single-threaded in terms of your expertise, and you might not be seeing all the things that are happening in the market. And maybe your training and your expertise is not at the level of the market. There's companies that we're working with that are 20, 30 years old. They've been business has been pretty steady, but then something happened. They may have
transitioned,
there may have been like a spike after the pandemic, perhaps, and then things fell off. And so now they're looking at their revenue and they're going, oh, well, this isn't working, but we've got this big established organization. What do we do? What's next? Or sometimes it can be a happy break where they're growing rapidly and then they're like, we can't take anymore. We're just gonna bust at the seams. So how do we fix this? And we don't necessarily just want to throw people at the problem. So how do we optimize it? So for those types of firms, a lot of what I've been doing is having, you almost call it like an intervention, but having a workshop with them where I've got a company that I'm working with, and a couple of weeks we're spending a weekend together, and they're bringing their leaders in from their different locations. I work with them either in person. Sometimes I'll work with them virtually if their leaders are all over. And we'll go through a process where now we'll sit back, because they might have, what usually the common thread is they've been doing a number of things tactically, but now they need to take a step back and revisit the strategy because the market has changed. Maybe their people have changed. Maybe their competitors are eating more of their lunch than they used to. So there's all sorts of things that could lead to that break, as you call it. And so we'll go through a very prescriptive reset on the strategy, what's the go-to-market, who are we targeting, what are they like, where do we find them, what are they looking for, what other competitors are going after them, what's their messaging, what's our strengths, what should our messaging be, and then we'll develop a set of kind of mini projects. So what's the 12-month plan? What needs to happen? Usually there'll be kind of an intensive 90-day sprint of activities that need to happen, maybe to refresh the messaging, the sales materials, et cetera. Maybe there's some things where there's new roles that they need to bring on the team, or they need to do a little bit of restructuring. So there's kind of that intense 90-day, how do we get to the foundation for 2.0, and then a number of initiatives that get implemented. And that can either be something that they would then go and implement everything themselves, or that's where, what I mentioned earlier about us being able to be kind of a fractional marketing department, that allows us to plug in and fill the gaps where perhaps either short term or longer term, they might not have the skills internally. So it's just bringing that fresh perspective when something is broken to get to that level that they need to for their 2.0.
are there some sticky parts in that process? Places where I shouldn't have
Where are
paused.
some
I
sticky
shouldn't have paused because you're like everything. Uh, but no, are there some places in that process when you think back about clients you worked with where where people inevitably seem to get stuck, even though, you guys are guiding them through it and they're trying, you guys have the process, you guys can walk them through it. But is there a place that where CEOs or other leadership comes in and they're like, they just have a hard time connecting with the concepts or getting past, getting around certain corners in the path that they're on? I would imagine that there are some places where you just see and you're like, we know you're going to get stuck here, so we actually modify our system and we change the language we use because everybody kind of just gets
Yeah.
stuck here and they struggle. Where are those struggle points for the teams that you work with?
Jeff, I mean, more often than not, the struggle points are people related because it's either, so some of the struggle points could be, oh, but Susie's been here for the last 10 years and she's been doing this thing for us and we love Susie and we don't want to let her go. So fine. So now
she loves social media. We don't want to take that away from her.
Right. So now we look at, okay, so maybe we figure out a way where we're working alongside Susie for a while and we're trying to train her. Maybe there's some things she can do to, capture content internally, but then, give it to us to kind of run with it and make sure that, all the analytics and the engagement and everything is done. So we find a good home for Susie, if you will, that is going to allow her to continue to add value to the company. Sometimes it's good old company politics of communications. Some different organizations are doing different things that maybe they're not talking in the way that they need to. And we have to, sometimes extend beyond your usual marketing conversations. And now we're talking about structure and mandate and there's a lot of principles of, name your methodology, but whether it's, EOS or scaling up or, whatever, but you need to have that, the clear structure in place, because if we're going to create a number of initiatives and we're going to create owners for initiatives, but we don't have the actual kind of overall ownership of the results, not us personally, somebody in the company in addition needs to have
alignment, buy-in,
that alignment, then it's just an exercise and we won't have really broken through to that change. So, those are some of the big things, because usually we need a new system, we need to change a process, we need to develop SO. I mean, that's all stuff that can get done fairly readily, but it's like the people stuff usually is the rubbing point in organizations. It's a lot of it's, either skill set or fiefdom kind of issues that get in the way.
You're using law firm terms right now, I think.
They're not just law firm terms, I will assure you.
Yeah. Well, so there's some struggle points there often with the people. Where are the points in the process where you see people kind of catch the spark and you're going and you're moving along and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is what we're doing? Yeah, I can do this. This, like, I didn't realize this is what it was. Like, let's go. Let's do it. Are there certain moments, maybe it's different for every company, but are there moments that you see where people tend to really get that buy-in, really feel, aligned and sold on the strategy?
Yeah, I think sort of the moment of alignment for an individual is everyone in a company has stuff they do that they would rather not do. Mm-hmm. And if all of a sudden they see that, oh, this technology can do that, whether it's AI or whether it's something else, or, oh, there's a more efficient way that you're going to show me, or, oh, you're just going to take this off my plate so I can go focus on the stuff that I'm really good at. And they're totally on board because now their every day just became a lot more pleasant.
It's the classic resolve my pain, and I'm
right, exactly,
and I'll agree with you.
And that's like for leaders that are trying to implement AI as well in general. That's the quickest way to get your team on board. As you look at there's I have a rule with my team that if anything is going to take you longer than 20 minutes, we need to take another look at it. Now that doesn't mean that the entire thing shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. But if you're doing anything that kind of feels like it's either repetitive, and that could mean I have to do it like once a day for a
Like a
week.
data entry thing,
Yeah, exactly. Or if there's something, if you're about to create a spreadsheet and analyze something that comes out of one of our systems, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go modify the system so that it's just going to give you what you need, like, as a dashboard on a moment by moment basis. So it's challenging those types of things. And as soon as people suddenly start to realize that those solutions can be implemented really rapidly now, they get excited because now they're looking at the next thing. Oh, you fixed this thing. So now I've got this other thing that's always been bugging me. And can we address that as well? And then they start to really get on board.
So we've been talking about people a lot, but now you're talking about the technology and the implementation side of it, which I think it was maybe before we started recording, you're like, yeah, it's changing every 45 seconds these days. So, how is that altering your practice and your team internally? And where are the kind of major leverage points that clients are able to, I don't want to say use AI, but reliably use AI, because I think there's a difference there.
Well, I mean, for us, and again, there's a difference between technology that you might use internally and technology that you're actually going to ship.
Sure.
Right? Very, very different animal. There's a lot of really cool things you can do internally, but it doesn't mean that you're in the software business. Right.
Right.
So
doesn't mean it's ready to sell out as a SaaS platform.
Exactly. Because all of the, I grew up working for technology companies, and all of that system development lifecycle stuff, it's a lot more rapid now, but like you still have spreads, you still have everything, but at the end of the day, all the levels of testing and, that all still exists. But that said, you can do some really cool things internally. So we were struggling with our project management system because you're trying to get the right reports that come out of it to do the right thing. Oh my God, this is ridiculous. And so we built one. And so now when someone on our team, and it's all AI enabled, and when someone on our team has a need, like I was explaining, if somebody wants to create a spreadsheet for something, and we can just go very quickly and say, no, we're just going to create that capability. And it's rapid. It gets implemented right away. Would I ever ship that to a client? Heck no. Would we show a client how to do it? Yeah, we could certainly do that.
Yeah, but it takes some expertise and maybe patience, right?
Yeah, and I come at things from a lens of, I've worked in technology for a long time. Like I said, I'm not technical, but I understand how to ask AI to do what I want, because I'm talking to it like it's a piece of technology, not like it's a human.
Yeah.
So that just makes it a lot easier when you're trying to develop your own thing. But even just, little tools that you might want to use yourself to make things easier. I mean, you can vibe code a lot of that stuff now. And even if you work for a bigger organization, then create it, use it as a prototype. I mean, I was working on technology projects back in the day where you would try to extract information from the brains of the executive, and then you document it all. Then you hope you had all the requirements documented right. And then you'd go and work with the development team, and they would take the requirements and they would build the thing. And then you'd show it to the executives, and invariably they would be like, well, can you also get it to do this other thing over here? And I'd be like, oh, okay, that would be a change control item. And now we need to circle back through the whole process again, right? And it was cumbersome. And that's why, a lot of technology projects would take a year, if not longer. And so now it's super rapid because you can iterate with it, get it to, this is what I want. And then you hand that over to either your internal or your external IT partner and say, build me this. And then they can go through the proper system development lifecycle, and they can make sure that, it's hardened and you're not going to have security issues and all that stuff that regular business people don't think about, and can really get their companies in trouble if they just go build it and, let it go out in the wild. But it's like that old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So it creates additional capability that helps to bridge the gap between business and technology.
Well, and I'm sure you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, right? We both deal with clients with lots of expectations, and one of those expectations is sometimes budgetary, limitations. Um, and so we get, we get a lot of people say, "Hey, I've got this document. It's ready to go. I've pretty much written it with the help of AI. Can you just look at it and let me know, that it's good to go." And one thing that the conversation I'm finding that I'm having, and I suspect you are too, to a large extent, is that people are approaching AI saying, "Okay, I've created this awesome output," and I'm trying to reframe that, saying, "That's not really output. That is going to be awesome input, but it's an input, not an output. You've just made a much better input than, and maybe save some time on, our back and forth and me understanding the issues, but it's still an input into my process, not an output from my process," right?
Yeah.
There's
In your
a
case, it's
big
not going to
distinction
stand up
there.
in a court of law because you know all the nuances that you need to work into it. It's like if you're using AI to try to diagnose a medical problem, right? You're going to have a great conversation with it, but are you going to take its output and risk your health with whatever it tells you to do? Or are you going to maybe take that and talk to your physician who's had all these years of training and you're going to say, hey, could it be this, this, or this? And they're probably going to tell you, in a heartbeat, well, no, because of this other thing that AI didn't associate with what your prompt was.
It's an interesting example you use, because I do think, and I'm not in this world much, but I hear some rumblings around it, and in the world of healthcare and peptides, I think there is actually quite a bit of self-diagnosing, self-administration, and some effects from that. And I don't know enough to speak to it, but it does kind of raise the issue that there are people who either ignorantly or not are making the decision to go forward with purely uh, AI diagnoses and recommendations. So, and I know we have some clients who do that, right? I have some good clients I work with on a regular basis, and they'll still say, "Hey, we did this letter of intent recently, and we signed it with the other party," and they'll hand it to you, and I'm like, "This was AI, wasn't it? Because I didn't do it." And they're like, "Yeah, it was AI. I felt pretty good about it." I'm like, "Okay, well, we'll have to." I mean, there's a bunch
There's
of
all the
stuff.
holes in it.
Yeah, a bunch of holes, and if nothing ever falls apart, then maybe it's fine. But when something falls apart, it can fall apart pretty wildly. So
Absolutely. I mean,
you're seeing that, and you're
I'm
having to
just on
balance
that
that.
point. Sorry. I mean, my word with AI is that I'm on this soapbox about is context.
Okay.
Because if, I have marketing context because of all my decades of experience, I will work with AI and I will get it to deliver a better result. You have legal context.
Yep.
You will work with AI and get it to deliver a better result. But I'm not an attorney. If I go to AI and I try to get it to create a document for me, there's going to be a lot of holes in it because I don't really know all of the details to ask. And I also don't know to push back. I don't know about you, but I have arguments with AI all the time. And it'll come and give me something. And I'll be like, no, you need to go look at this
Yep.
other thing. And it'll be like, oh, yes, that was a very good suggestion. I'm going to go look at that now. And, but if I just took it at face value because I was a, fresh graduate or whatever, or somebody who didn't have context in that field, I would end up going down the wrong path. And that's the part that I think that people are just assuming because they get the answer from ChatGPT that it's right. And if you don't have the context to work with it to get the right answers, it could send you down the wrong path.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I actually this morning was working on a project, and the concept of context came up, and I think there's actually two layers to it. One is, the broader context, you know when to ask the right questions, but the other is AI has context, right? When you get into a thread on AI, you're actually dealing with, and I did this because this came up because I kind of said, "Hey, I've got two versions of a document. I want to compare and contrast them. I want to assess each of them for certain things." And as soon as I did that, I actually created the boundaries of the conversation. So
Cool.
later on, when I made some changes to one document, it wasn't just my, general knowledge influencing how that conversation went. I actually could not get out of the context that was placed there by the second document that I ultimately didn't want to use. And it kept trying to revert my better document back to other document, and I finally had to say no. I got to go into a different thread because the way the way my Claude is set up with the team account and all that stuff, I had to actually go into a new thread so that I could escape the context that I didn't want to be limiting the conversation. So that
because of your human context, you knew that.
exactly, human context and AI context maybe are working in opposite directions sometimes. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love the conversation we're having, and I want to bring this back around just to the human element of this, because when it's all said and done, we're not to the point yet that you and I are being hired by AI agents and paid by AI agents. Maybe that will happen someday.
Not this month, anyway.
Yeah, maybe in another 45 seconds from now. But it really, I mean, there's this human element to everything we do. You and I deal with humans. we deal with our clients are really in every business to some extent right now as a human business. It's relationships. It's communication. Like, where do you see this going? And because AI is changing, where do you see your practice going? And where do you see people, clients leveraging the technology to improve the human aspect of what they're doing?
I mean, despite all of the risks and all the concerns about AI and jobs, I'm very, very excited about it because I fundamentally believe in the human spirit. I believe in our creativity. I believe that we are going to find ways to leverage AI that, you and I having this conversation today haven't even imagined. I think we did that with the internet. We're going to do it again. Doesn't mean that if you're not using AI today that you're not going to be able to keep your job, and it doesn't mean that if you're not using AI today that you're going to find your opportunities are severely limited. But that said, when we look at the rapid acceleration of the technology, and when we look at now coupling that with robotics and with even just taking agentic AI to the next level and all the things that we can do, having AI be our personal assistant in so many ways, so that we get to do the more of the fun work. I mean, there are jobs out there that we all know that humans should not be doing. It's just they're just draining, and it does make more sense that we have AI or AI enabled robotics doing those jobs or working alongside humans to make us better. And so while I can't fully imagine even what things are going to look like a year down the road, I do see with the rapid pace of change that right now we're still using AI in different threads. We have different tools doing different things. We're currently, at least most of us, are a little afraid to kind of give it full access to all of our stuff, because you hear all the horror stories about, even on the corporate level about, you've got agents that are, breaking into other companies, and they're going like outside of their guardrails because they thought they were on a mission, and they'll just go. And so you hear those things, and it does cause, I mean, you talk to anyone in corporate IT these days, and they're just like, they're not feeling really comfortable about where a lot of this is going, and there's definitely some risk. So we do need to get on top of that. But when we figure out how to manage that risk and how to be comfortable with the risk in the same way that today we are comfortable making a banking transaction online. 10 years ago, we were not. Right. And so, if you think of how fast that's going to accelerate and what we're going to be able to do, I think companies are going to be able to scale that much more quickly. You're already seeing, we're getting to like our multi-billion-dollar companies that when you look at the relative percentage of humans to agents, it's pretty impressive. As scary as that might be for especially for entry-level workers, we got to figure out that whole dilemma, which is why we're thinking, we're seeing more of an uptick in entrepreneurship. But if you imagine being a founder, and if it's so much simpler to scale your company because you can scale up with technology and fewer smart humans who are managing that technology, and what you're going to be able to get to market that much quicker. I just find that very, very exciting.
And it makes me think of two things when you say all that, because one is there's probably a reliability gap, right? Like we don't trust, just like you mentioned with online banking transactions. For a time, we didn't necessarily trust that it was all going to happen the way it was supposed to, that there wouldn't be someone looking over our shoulder or taking, getting our information from our email. But I think the reliability gap in that sense is closed. And that will eventually happen on the AI side, right? We'll figure out that, okay, we can rely on this overall in these situations. The other thing it makes me think of is, and you introduced me to a new term today. I haven't thought of the term happy break before within the concept of this breakout art. And I love it. I love it because as we're talking, maybe that is partly where this is headed as AI accelerates things. Maybe it will be solving some of the less happy breaks in our businesses, but maybe it will actually be identifying and creating opportunities around the happy breaks that we otherwise might be overlooking in our business or aren't really, I don't want to say achieving, but aren't really dealing with because we're not moving fast enough to actually see those happy breaks. So I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. So
it's your next part of your methodology.
Exactly. Happy breaks. Well, Deanna, it's been great having you on the show and catching up with you and talking about ZenChange and the things that you're doing there. What kind of parting words would you leave for somebody, a scaling CEO who's maybe just at one of those struggle moments in their own business? What would you say to them as parting words here?
Well, I mean, I think that, every technology revolution, it changes the tools. It doesn't change the importance of trust, of clarity, of leadership. And I think the organizations that remember that tend to outperform the ones that are chasing the newest trend. So as much as technology is exciting and it's expanding, I think remembering the core of what makes us love being human is what will lead us to success in our businesses.
I love that. I couldn't say it better, so I won't try. If people want to get a hold of you, what's a good place to connect or find out more about what you do?
I'd say, hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Diane Moura is my profile, or website is zenchange.com.
Awesome. Diane, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and to our audience who joined us, we're always glad to have you on the Breakout CEO. Be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you enjoy the show, a rating or a review goes a long way. Our mission is to promote the stories of breakout CEOs in scaling SaaS, e-commerce, and tech companies to equip peer CEOs with valuable perspectives and confidence. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of The Breakout CEO. I'm Jeff Holman, and I'll see you next time.